Most Canadians never talk about the moment their savings account crosses $40,000. But something real happens when it does. Not in the world around you, but inside the way you think about money. The fear that used to follow you every payday starts to loosen its grip. The math you used to avoid suddenly feels interesting. And for the first time in your adult life, money stops being a problem you're trying to survive and starts becoming a tool you actually know how to use. This number matters more than most people realize because it isn't random. $40,000 is the threshold where your money begins working in a way that the majority of Canadians will never get to experience. According to Statistics Canada, the household savings rate slowed to 3.5% in the first quarter of 2026, the lowest level since early 2024, and the average household debt to income ratio climbed to 179.6% in that same quarter, the sixth quarterly increase in a row. That means for every dollar a Canadian household earns after taxes, they owe about $1.80. So when you cross $40,000 in real savings, you are not just ahead of the average. You are in a completely different financial reality than most people around you. Let's talk about what actually changes. The first thing that shifts is your nervous system. When you have less than a few $1,000s saved, every unexpected expense feels like a threat. A car repair, a dental bill, a slow month at work, any of it can knock you off balance. Your body knows this, even if your mind tries to ignore it. You carry a low hum of stress everywhere you go. But once you cross $40,000, that hum starts to fade. A $2,000 emergency stops being a crisis and becomes an inconvenience. You sleep better. You make decisions from a clearer place. And that alone changes the trajectory of your life, because people who make decisions from fear almost always make worse decisions than people who make them from stability. The second thing that changes is how your money grows. At smaller balances, interest and returns feel pointless. Earning 4% on $2,000 gives you $80 a year, and that doesn't feel like it's worth caring about. But $40,000 sitting in a Canadian high interest savings account or a cashable GIC at around 3.5 to 4% gives you somewhere between $1,400 and $1,600 a year without you doing anything. Move that same $40,000 into a diversified portfolio inside your TFSA, and at a historical average return of 7%, you're looking at roughly $2,800 a year in growth. That's almost an extra month of rent in most Canadian cities, generated by money you already have. This is the point where compounding stops being a theory you read about and starts becoming something you can actually feel in your account. The third shift is psychological, and it might be the most important one of all. Before $40,000, you tend to think in terms of bills. After $40,000, you start thinking in terms of choices. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Is this the best use of my money right now?" That's a completely different question. It's the question wealthy people ask. And the reason they ask it is not because they have more money, it's because they have enough breathing room to think past the next paycheck. You just bought yourself that same breathing room. The TFSA contribution limit for 2026 is $7,000, and the cumulative room for someone who's been eligible since 2009 is now $109,000. When you have $40,000, suddenly that full TFSA room stops looking impossible. It looks like a project you can finish in a few years if you stay focused. The fourth thing that changes is your relationship with risk. Most Canadians avoid investing because they're scared of losing money they can't afford to lose. That fear is rational when your savings are thin. But at $40,000, you can split your money intelligently. You can keep $10,000 in a high interest account for emergencies, put $20,000 into a diversified TFSA portfolio for long term growth, and leave $10,000 flexible for opportunities that come up. The 2026 RRSP contribution limit is $33,810 or 18% of your previous year's earned income, whichever is lower, and once you have real savings, using that room strategically can shave thousands off your tax bill every single year. For someone earning $80,000, maxing out a meaningful RRSP contribution could return $3,000 or more at tax time, which is money you can then funnel right back into your TFSA. The fifth shift is one almost nobody warns you about. Your social circle starts to feel different, not because you've changed, but because you start noticing things you used to ignore. You hear coworkers complain about being broke after a vacation they couldn't afford. You watch friends finance furniture at 29% interest. You see family members treat their tax refund like a bonus instead of a return of their own money. None of this makes you feel superior. It makes you feel a little lonely, honestly, because the habits that got you to $40,000 are not the habits most people around you are practicing. This is the part where a lot of Canadians get stuck. They self sabotage. They spend the savings to feel normal again, to fit back into the group they used to belong to. Don't do that. The discomfort you feel is the price of progress, and it fades once you find better conversations to be part of. Look for online Canadian finance communities. Find one or two friends who share your goals and protect that mindset like it's an asset because it is. The sixth thing that changes is your time horizon. Before $40,000, you plan in weeks. After $40,000, you start planning in years. You begin to think about what your money could look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20. And the math here is something every Canadian should see at least once. $40,000 invested at a 7% average annual return with no additional contributions becomes roughly $78,000 in 10 years, about $155,000 in 20 years, and around $300,000 in 30 years. Now add even $500 a month in contributions, which is realistic for someone already disciplined enough to save $40,000, and that same starting point becomes close to $700,000 in 30 years. The reason most Canadians never reach this kind of number is not because the math is hard. It's because they never gave compounding enough time to do its job. Time is the ingredient nobody can buy back, and you protect it by starting now. There's also a hidden benefit to crossing $40,000 that rarely gets discussed. Your options at the bank change. Lenders treat you differently when they see real liquid savings on your statements. Mortgage approvals get easier. Lines of credit get cheaper. Even insurance premiums can shift in your favor because you look like a lower risk client. The Canadian financial system is built to reward people who already have money, and once you have a meaningful amount saved, you start unlocking doors that were closed before. The seventh and final shift is the one that surprises people the most. You stop chasing more. The hunger that drove you to save in the first place starts to settle, and you realize that financial freedom isn't really about being rich. It's about not being controlled. It's about being able to say no to a job you hate, no to a relationship that drains you, no to a city that's draining your bank account every month. $40,000 is not the finish line. It's the doorway. It's the first time most Canadians get to feel what it's like to have actual options, and once you feel that, you don't want to go back. Some people describe it as a kind of clarity, where the noise of consumer culture starts to fade and you can finally hear what you actually want out of life. So if you're not there yet, keep going. Cut the subscriptions you don't use. Automate transfers into your TFSA the day you get paid. Track your net worth once a month instead of your spending, because what gets measured gets improved. And if you're already past $40,000, don't slow down. The next threshold, around $100,000, is where compounding starts doing the heavy lifting for you. The growth from $100,000 to $200,000 happens faster than the climb from $0 to $100,000, and the jump from $200,000 to $500,000 happens faster still. You're closer to that curve than you think, and every month you stay consistent is a month the math tilts further in your favor. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you're headed, do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. I will see you there.